Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone can hear me. I've been having some issues with my audio, so this is attempt number 5 or 6 at this point, but I'm just going to jump right in. My name is Thomas Sweeney. I'm with the Mersey Tobeatic Research Institute, and today I'm doing a quick presentation working on invasive species, and specifically how we can reach out to anglers and have a community social marketing campaign to influence positive decisions regarding invasive species in the fishing community. So first, obviously, I need to make a big thank you. This project is being organized by the Nova Scotia Salmon Association with funding from the Canada Nature Fund. So without either of these groups, this wouldn't be possible. And it's a tremendous honor to be a part of it. It's a really good cause and we're doing some good things. Also a big thank you to Sam Hudson and everyone at CARP who's been putting these presentations together. Had an excellent week learning about all these things. I'm going to try my hand at foraging now. Never have, but that presentation on Monday convinced me. So jumping in, we are talking about invasive species, as you might guess. I'm specifically going to be looking at 2 fish that are quite infamous in Nova Scotia, and they are the smallmouth bass and the chain pickerel. In the angling community, when we talk about bass, the terms are smallies or stripers, because we do have our anadromous ocean-going striped bass population. And last thing I want to do is say that we're trying to limit the spread of them, because they are quite an active sport fish that people love. So when I'm talking, if I just say bass, please know I'm talking about our freshwater smallmouth bass. There are other non-native fish in Nova Scotia, and it's important to differentiate between non-native and invasive. Especially for government documents and how they are managed. We have the rainbow trout and the brown trout, which both have active stocking and hatchery programs. And we do not for the bass and pickerel. So the bass and pickerel, they are very different fish, totally different life cycles and taxonomies and biology surrounding them, but they're quite similar in that they have, in the effects that they have when they're introduced to a water body, which is lower species biodiversity, and lower abundance of our native trout, or in some cases salmon. They are both pretty voracious feeders. One of the ways that they're quite different is the chain pickerel can tolerate a whole lot of different environmental effects that the smallmouth bass cannot. They are notorious for being able to move through fast flowing water, just like stagnant water, low oxygen. They're able to do well just about anywhere, and they'll eat just about anything, including other chain pickerel. So these fish have been here for a while, for over 50 years. The smallmouth bass were originally a legal introduction to boost the sport fishery. They're a much loved sport fish. And I can say personally, I've been fishing all my life. They are great fun to catch. The chain pickerel, there is not as much love from the angling community. They are not as fun to catch, not as fun to eat, and the effects that they have on native species are a little bit more obvious as they happen quite a bit more quickly. So knowing these 2 different fish, it's probably not too surprising that you see articles like this coming out of New Brunswick, where they're also invasive. But we do have lots of cases of this in Nova Scotia. I just picked a more recent CBC article. Conservation groups are trying to eradicate smallmouth bass from a lake. Well, that's a pretty standard story. We see it all over the place, and there are active efforts all over Nova Scotia as well. But on the flip side of the coin, you have articles like this from Canada Outdoors, which is one of the leading hunting and fishing magazines in the country, and all sorts of articles about how you can pick the trophy smallmouth bass fishing locations in the province. So it's a really fine line between recognizing that they're an invasive species, but there are some water bodies where they're very well established and they're not, unfortunately, going to be able to be removed. So people do angle for them, and they are a managed sport fish, and very much so a trophy fish. We have derbies, and I go fishing for them as well in Nova Scotia. So the project isn't trying to end fishing for any species necessarily, but rather get to know anglers better and using community social marketing as a tool to influence positive changes in the angling community. So any community social marketing campaign begins with identifying barriers to sustainable behavior. And for this, some of these unsustainable behaviors, they can be as egregious as catching a bunch of bass, putting them in a bucket and taking them to your local pond so that you can more easily go fishing. It's a particularly egregious way that these species are able to move across the province. But it could be something as simple as always eating our native brook trout and always releasing the bass. Carp has done wonderful work with the Eat Your Invasives campaign. We have some tasty fish that we can sustainably remove, and in doing so, help protect our local trout. So the second part of a community social marketing campaign is identifying opportunities to improve upon these behaviors. So with any barrier, we can usually find some type of opportunity to move forward. For example, not knowing regulations regarding the spread of invasive species or our live fish in possession, which we have quite strict rules regarding. A lack of awareness about that we might need to improve our education and our outreach. On the more extreme end, there could be the lack of buy-in to those rules or engagements, the act of knowing what the rules and regulations are, but willfully not wanting to follow them. So that's obviously a deeper issue that we would need to look into. Well, why is that? And what can we do to foster a better relationship? And with community social marketing, the idea is that we have targeted interventions. We don't have the resources to reach every single person in the province of Nova Scotia. And if in a couple of years, we probably won't be able to say now everyone in the province fully understands the threats of invasive species and people are all changing their behaviors for the better. Instead, community social marketing, we want to use targeted approaches to high priority areas and communities. And the first step of this project is figuring out, well, where are those? So the first part of our project is actually going to be a survey that right now we're just testing with a couple different groups and trying it out for any tweaks that we might need to do, but is going to be ready to be distributed widely very shortly. So, and some of the questions we're looking at are, what are the barriers to sustainable fisheries in terms of invasives? And are these similar barriers across the province? And who are the priority communities to work with? And what's really important here is that communities don't really have a geographic scope. So sometimes they can. If we say that, oh, well, in this south of the province, we see in this recreational fishing area, a lot of people who really love bass and are trying to actively move bass to more areas. Well, then that could be a geographic community. But anglers are not a monolith. We also have differences in the community ranging from age and fishing style. Fly fishers, live bait fishers, lures, and targeted species. There are a lot of people who exclusively go to Cape Breton to fish for Atlantic salmon. There are others who only fish for bass because they're fun fish to catch. So knowing which groups are the most important to work with is the goal of this survey. And a big part of that is getting a better idea of who's fishing in the province. Now, this picture on the left is what we think of as anglers in Nova Scotia often. Usually men, a little bit older, and they're wearing their yellow waders. And before anyone thinks I'm making fun of the gentleman in this picture, I actually took a picture of a photo hanging on our wall. That's my grandfather, my father, and my uncle. So we often think that anglers are one group. And in terms of engagement, many fishing clubs, fly fishing organizations, environmental communities, they are predominantly run with fly fishing in mind, and there is a much higher proportion of retirees looking to get involved in environmental work in their local communities. But all you have to do is go down to Halifax Harbor when the mackerel are running and see who has a line in the water. And you can see pretty quickly that there's a wide variety of people fishing in Nova Scotia. Everyone from new Canadians to very young people that just bought their first rod at Canadian Tire to the seasoned folks with boxes of gear next to them. And so our goal is to piece that apart a little bit. And then the second part is to figure out, well, how do these people make changes in regards to angling, and where are they getting their information from? In some of the preliminary discussions I've been having with anglers, I've talked to people in their 60s who say that they primarily get their news and information regarding fishing from fellow anglers. So those are conversations that happen streamside or on a boat in the ocean. And that community, therefore, is not best reached with a social media campaign. Conversely, I've had conversations with younger anglers who get most of their information from social media and don't, for example, listen to the radio that often or don't belong to any fishing clubs. So it's very important to not just know what the community, who's involved in a fishing community, but also what are the best ways to reach them. So that takes us to our survey. And I mentioned this before, but our goals are not to limit angling opportunities. I myself am an angler, and really we're just trying to find out a little bit more about how people are angling and what it is they're looking for. So these are just a couple questions on the left. What species do you target by order of preference, preferred, and which ones do you avoid? It's quite common for people who are going out looking for some brook trout. If they catch a chain pickerel, they'll put the line, put everything back in the car and pick a new spot for next time. Something that I've heard in chats already as well is, well, I fly fish and I only fly fish for trout. Having said that, I release all my trout, but yeah, if I ever catch perch, of course I'm going to eat perch. So these are the things we're looking to find out. And really, extra little benefit of this is that we're creating a broader relationship with anglers. So right now, as an NGO, we know people in the fishing community primarily through river protection stewardship societies and fly fishing clubs. And so a wonderful side effect of this is that we're really looking to know people who, yeah, maybe just started fishing this year. And as I said, bought their first rod and reel from Canadian Tire. And the third point that I find very interesting is that we're trying to create opportunities for feedback and involvement. When we first talked about the survey, we said, well, what are the ways we can incentivize people to take it and to take it seriously? And overwhelmingly, we thought perhaps, gift cards or some type of raffle. Overwhelmingly, I'm talking to people and they've said, well, no, I would like an opportunity to write something back, because anglers do have very strong opinions regarding the management of their aquatic species. Even when I've made it clear we are not a body of the government, so we are not writing legislation regarding fishing. I say, well, that's okay, but I still want you as an NGO to know what I think. And that's a really excellent opportunity to learn more about what it is that people are looking for when they angle. And we have some questions in the survey related to that. How important is expanding recreational fishing opportunities to you? Questions along that line. So with that in mind, I know I'm already going a little bit over. We'd love to hear from you. So this is my email address, thomas.sweeney@merseytobeatic.ca. None of it's capitalized. And please, even if you just have some questions, if you don't want to take the survey, that's not a problem. We'd love to hear. So thank you again. Big thank you to the Nova Scotia Salmon Association, the Canada Nature Fund, but also again to Sam and everyone at CARP for putting this wonderful week together, and hope everyone has a great weekend. Take care.